Hello, Rama Puppodu. I hope all are happy, feeling healthy, feeling relaxed, and having a peaceful life. Now, let's continue with our next chapter, chapter 32. Mukund Rishi's Ashram and Dwarka. Ramdas occupied this ashram and remained in it for 10 days. He would light a small fire and squatting before it perform Ram Bhajan for whole nights. The place was full of bats and doves. Since it was a deserted and frightful place, people of the town and sadhus as well were considering it a privilege to visit the sannyasi dwelling in such a place. Some of these well-intentioned friends at first warned Ramdas of all the supposed fears of the place. They were all replied to saying that when the all-powerful Ram protects there is no room for any fear. Here Maganlal and Kantilal were paying Ramdas visits every day. They procured for him from the Muslim friends an excellent translation of the Holy Quran in English by a well-known Mauli of Lahore. The Quran is indeed a grand work. Ramdas derived a great deal of benefit by going through these teachings of the great Prophet Muhammad. Then Ramdas received the command from Ram to start from the place. Thus Ramdas left Junagadh by the midnight train and after a change at some junction reached the station of Porapundar. From the station, Ramdas proceeded into the city of Sudamapuri. The blessed Saint Sudama, that great Bhakta of Sri Krishna, had lived here and hence the name Sudamapuri. Here, Ramdas was reminded now and again of Sudama's humble offer of beaten rice to Krishna and the loving acceptance of it by him, and also how Sri Krishna on one occasion washed the feet of Sudama, which brought to Ramdas' mind the famous line of Swami Ramatirtha, "A slave is a slave because he is free." Ramdas, in the company of two sadhus, visited the temple of Sri Krishna, said to have been erected at the spot where Sudama's cottage once stood. The same evening, Ramdas and the two sadhus, who were joined later by two more, in all forming a party of 5, started on foot towards Dwarka. It was quite a jolly party of which an old sadhu, having a beard on his chin, a big turban on his head, a thick kambal on his back, a pair of wooden sandals in one hand and a broken brass pot in the other, a wooden armrester hanging by his shoulder, a quilt jacket on his body, and a cowpin round his loins, was chosen as the leader of the company. He was a simple, unassuming, good-natured and harmless old saint. Merrily the sadhus walked miles after miles, each one narrating to the other some bits of his experiences. Ramdas was all the time engaged either in listening to the stories or repeating Ram's sweet name. A halt was made for the night in a small wayside village, the residents of which treated the sadhus with great hospitality. Next morning, very early, the sadhuram, namely the leader, gave the call for a start. Shaking off sleep, the sadhus rose up in obedience to the order of the leader and shouldering their respective bundles set forward on their journey. Thus, they travelled on breaking journey at midday and night in villages until they reached the old shrine called Dwarka, covering in all a distance of 20 miles from Sudamapuri. Hence, there was an ashram of a sadhu in which was found always an assembly of 20 to 30 itinerant sadhus. Here the new arrivals got mingled with the sadhus of the ashram in happy association and then visited the old temple. It is said Sri Krishna had made his first stay at this place before he changed to Dwarka proper. or Bet Dwarka as it is called. After travelling a little further again, the party reached Gomti Dwarka. This shrine is also considered as an important place of pilgrimage on account of the sacred river Gomti, which flowed here at one time but has since dried up, now remains in place of it. A tank is in which pilgrims consider it a great privilege to bathe. After obtaining darshan in the big temple of this place and spending a day here also is the society of many other travelling sadhus who come here every day in hundreds. The party strode on under the orders and led of the Venerable Sadhuram, and arriving at the railway station, got into a train which was fully packed with sadhus. This carriage was called Sitaram carriage. It is really a generous act of the railway company to permit sadhus to travel on that line free of tickets. It was an uncommon blessing of Ram to have secured for Ramdas the company of nearly 40 sadhus, all mixing with each other in perfect amity and innocence like small children at play. Each sadhu was busy opening his bundle or bag to exhibit to his neighbor sadhu his articles of curious such as conchs, shells, rudraksh, small framed pictures of gods of various shrines, all collected during his pilgrimage all over India. At last the train carried them to the railway terminus, a small station. Here alighting, they proceeded to the seashore where they were allowed to board two steam boats belonging to a Mohammedan. When the permission was granted by the boat owner, there was a cry from all the sadhus in one voice, Muhammad ki Jai. The gulf was duly crossed and the sadhus reached the island of Dwarka. It was night when they arrived. Resting in a dharmashala during night, the next morning the party visited the famous temple of Dwarkanath. Here again an indescribable feeling of rapture and joy was experienced by Ramdas when he stood in front of the idol of Sri Krishna. Ramdas remained inside the temple for nearly 2 hours in a state of complete and blissful abstraction. Ramdas next wandered on the seashore, jumping from rock to rock all the time, absorbed in the meditation of Ram. Here the party of sadhus stayed for 2 days. On the third day, at the command of the Sadhuram, the company started on their return journey. Now an incident occurred which must be noted down here. The party, as usual, stopped at a certain village for the night and at the command of the leader of all started before daybreak. The Sadhuram awoke rather too early. It was still dark and the sadhus grumbled that they could not properly see their way. There were also 2 more sadhus who had joined the party at the village. These were 2 young men, one blind in both eyes, led by another who was blind in one eye. The Sadhuram assured the party that the sun would rise soon, but for nearly 2 hours they walked on in the dark, stumbling, grumbling, missing the way now and again. Still, daybreak was as far away as ever. They all took the leader severely to task for it, but the old Sadhuram was silently leading the path and did not give any reply to the adverse criticism passed on to him by his friends. He himself was simply groping in the dark with great difficulty and was at every step becoming more and more conscious of the fact that he had lost the way and that he was leading all in an unknown direction. On and on the party went. Now they came upon wet ground, then on muddy soil. Further and further they went, and at last found themselves in knee-deep mud. Here there was a furious cry of halt from all. It was still pitch dark. Everyone was straining his eyes except of course the poor blind sadhu, towards the horizon in expectation of signs of the rising sun. But the sun was still a long way off. Again some of the sadhus grumbled and asked the Sadhuram as to what to do next in that plight. The Sadhuram never replied. After some amount of fruitless discussion, they arrived at an unanimous conclusion that they should wait there until daybreak, for to attempt to move from there might prove a worse fate, perhaps a fall into a ditch or a deeper descent into mud. Okay, folks, that's all for today. Let's see in the next chapter. Thank you. Bye bye. Rama Rama Puppodu.